we're breaking into a segment. We're going to cover Morgan & Morgan, their new slogan. It's not that new, I guess, but it's new-ish. Size matters. And 28,000, that's right, 28,000 5-star reviews. So let's get into this. Now, Guy, you posted this. This was interesting. It's the results for Morgan & Morgan are showing 28,000 reviews for every single location, right? This is a very large firm, probably the largest firm out there, with lots and lots of locations. And yet every single location on Google is showing 28,000 5-star reviews. How are they doing that?
Well, you mentioned that I posted this, and we'll put a link into the, I guess we could share the Facebook thread, but
we could screen share this for the YouTubers who are watching us.
I think I tweeted about it, but really I was actually sharing that as a reminder that what Google employees say and what the Google machine does are definitely not the same thing. So let's set this up. Google has guidelines on how you can use structured data on your site in order to get rich snippets in the results. And so what's a rich snippet? I think you'll see if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get a sense because we'll do the screen share. But one of the types of rich snippets are the little stars that you see in the results. So it'll say like rating, in this particular case, 5, 28,529 votes. So my whole thing, and I've seen this, Morgan & Morgan's not the only firm to do this. In fact, there's some other SEO agencies that do it. I was kind of like, hey, this is a very clever way to populate the rich snippet. So interesting idea there, SEO team. Couple issues that come up from this. Go ahead. You got one?
A couple. Yeah. Okay. We might need another hour.
Yeah, so the starting point for me was that, Google says you can't use these self-serving reviews on your website. You can't publish your own testimonials with you can certainly publish your own testimonials, but if you use structured data, the little code snippet, to try to get the rich snippet, that's a violation of their guideline. And in this particular instance, it's not only that they're just using the structured data, they're using the same structured data for every single Office page that they've created, which is debatable whether these are doorway pages or not, but that's a discussion for another time.
That's a different SEO question.
But certainly not 28,000. I mean, it's not implied that there's 28,000 reviews in the New York office and 28,000 in the Chattanooga office. They're using the same snippet for all the locations, which is also against the quality guideline. We'll put a link to the structured data guidelines.
And so the key here is, like, if you're McDonald's with McDonald's franchises all over the country, the stars for your franchise in Boise are about your franchise in Boise. It's not about McDonald's overall. That's Google's perspective on this, and I think that's a fair perspective.
Right. So, and in fact, maybe we'll have our good friend Chris Silversmith actually did even a little bit more digging on the Facebook thread and noticed that not only are those issues in play, but they're also using the product aggregate review markup. And his viewpoint was that that's probably intentional to get around Google's filtering of the local business structured data countermeasure that wouldn't show the rich snippet. So I was like, oh, that's pretty creative. Now,
right, so
go ahead.
Can you explain that in I'm a lawyer layman's terms? Why would a product review be different, and how would that be used? What does a product review mean, and how is that different? Why would that enable them to get around this?
Well, because there's all sorts of product review sites, right? So they want to show, if you're a site that aggregates reviews, right, like G2 or Clutch or something like that, they want to be able to show the aggregate product markup, but they don't want businesses showing that for their own service. So if if you're an e-commerce site, right? That's another obvious one. So I sell a bunch of different products, and I have people coming to my site and they're leaving reviews of the product. That's fine. I'm not actually like reviewing my own product. That's the essential difference in this context. I mean, there's some other differences, but the short version is that there's different structured data markup for different purposes. Google's got guidelines on this. It appears that maybe the SEO folks for this site were trying to circumvent that countermeasure. And so, Silversmith was implying and he does a lot of work as an expert witness in cases surrounding Google stuff. And he brought up that, hey, this might be a violation of maybe a rule of professional conduct because it's misleading, because they're intentionally trying to make it look like something else. Might be an issue, an FTC issue. So we're not using this as an example. Again, we brought it up in the context of Google doesn't always, the Google PR team doesn't always match up what the Google algorithm does. Another we're tying it in also to this idea of if your positioning is size matters, you're inclined to make things look pretty big, which 28,000, no one else got 28,000 reviews for every single office page.
No one has 28,000 reviews. Right.
No one has that.
No office.
It's huge.
No.
That is big.
It's huge.
But we're not advocating this as a thing to do.
Would you do this for your clients?
No. Let me
rephrase this. We both know the answer to that question. Let me rephrase that. Why would you not do this for your clients, Guy? It's clearly working for Morgan & Morgan.
Well, this goes back to the prior segment about expectation setting. We try to help our clients make informed decisions. So, I'd come to the client with all these issues and be like, and first of all, we'd never recommend this just because of the risks that we just discussed. Two, it could be.
But so, sorry, we talked about why this is kind of meh, why it doesn't really make sense. What are the risks here for a firm?
Well, if you're taking Chris points, maybe there is a potential ethics issue. Maybe there is an FTC issue. And when you weigh those against, if Google is trying to filter this out, there's a good chance that Google can flip a switch and then all of these snippets disappear. The other thing, and this hasn't really happened, I saw it, I'd be curious if you've ever seen this, but I saw some cases about manual actions related to structured data guideline violations. I haven't seen those come up very much. But if any SEOs, if you happen to be listening to this, we'd love to if you got an example of that. But I recall some conversation about manual actions based on structured data violations. You ever hear that?
So let me just open up what you're going with here. Can you imagine what would happen? And we can talk about whether or not it would happen. But can you imagine what would happen if all of a sudden Morgan & Morgan's review count went to 0 nationwide, right? Now, the fact that Morgan & Morgan probably spends a little bit more than I do on pay-per-click advertising may have something to do with whether or not that happens. There is supposedly a church and state between advertising and organic local. But when Guy talks about manual action, Google back in the day was vicious about, and it didn't matter how big the brand was, they were vicious on violations. There are plenty of examples of firms, maybe even in the, say, legal marketing space, who got whacked for violating some of the best practices. Not even the best practices, but the published best practices. But can you imagine what would happen if Google did? That would fundamentally talk about a single incident that would change the marketplace dramatically for legal. I can't think of anything bigger.
Well, this is, again, for me, it's this is one of those examples just so frustrating about working in this industry. And for those that aren't watching on YouTube, we popped open a search result page for Bedford, New Hampshire personal injury lawyer. And, surprise, Morgan & Morgan's listing is number 1 in the local pack. There's also some 10 and 10 New Hampshire lawyers, business name, field optimization. And then that page, forthepeople.com Bedford, New Hampshire personal injury lawyer page, which we can debate whether it's a doorway page or not. It's the number one result for that. The traditional, I call it traditional organic result. The one below the local pack is also their page with the aggregate review product markup for rating 5, 28,529 votes. And so again, my big thing is this, like, we can get into the, lawyers are supposed to, not try to mislead and all that stuff. And we can debate all the ethics stuff. But for me, I'm like, Google is, everybody's spending a lot of money on Google. They're trying to do these moonshot projects. They got all these PR people out there telling everybody do the right thing, and then they're not fixing it. That's the thing that's frustrating to me. And this is a perfect example of that. And for those that are listening, it's a perfect example of be careful about blindly following Google's advice or any SEO expert's advice, because there's a bit more nuance to the whole thing than just create great content and let Google sort the rest out.
Yeah. I mean, even in the local pack, like we've dealt with this in the last 2 years with keyword spamming of the names, which I stayed out of for a very, very long time, frankly, to the detriment of some of my clients, right? It's not a best practice. It's not a best practice. It's not a best practice. It works. It works. It works. It works. Okay, let's catch up and do it, right? Like that happened. That very much happened. And I think that the interesting thing for me with size matters and reviews specifically, and I think this is unfair, and I don't have a good answer to why this should happen or how to solve for this. But the volume of reviews, the sheer volume, is a huge ranking factor, which is what we're seeing here, right? And if you are a big firm or you do a lot of volume, your opportunity to generate a lot of reviews is there. Conversely, if you are a super specialized boutique that only handles really unusual cases, but they take a long time, you have 3 or 4 cases at any given time, it's really hard to compete on the review volume game. It just is. That is a fact. And I don't have an answer for that, but it is frustrating on the size matters things. It is favoring larger firms that do volume, period.
Money makes a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round.